Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're unpacking a narrative that kicks off with a classic, spine-chilling, spooky premise, but then it quickly unravels into something way deeper. We're looking at the tale of Laxmii. It's a fictional horror story drawn from our source material, but it carries a very real, very heavy social message. So let's dim the lights and set the scene for a story full of twists.
Okay, let's dive into this. The whole thing begins with Jimmy. He's just a totally normal 17-year-old boy on a routine trip to his aunt's house to celebrate Diwali. He's minding his own business, right? But then he makes a grave, literally life-altering mistake. It really begs the question, can a simple bangle found on the street threaten your actual life? Well, let's trace his steps and see exactly how things went so wrong.
So the source lays out this incredibly rapid, chilling sequence of events. Jimmy's family briefly stops by a roadside shop to grab some water. Simple enough. But nearby, Jimmy notices a huge crowd gathered around a dead woman's body. As he glances over, he feels this bizarre, icy shadow brush right past him. And then, he does the unthinkable. He reaches down and actually steals a bangle, a kata, from the deceased's scattered belongings. Without even realizing the absolute gravity of what he's just done, Jimmy brings this cursed object right into his aunt's house. Now, remember, before this trip, Jimmy is just your average, everyday 17-year-old. But man, once that stolen bangle enters the house, a dark possession begins to take hold. Jimmy's behavior completely flips. He starts obsessively wearing the bangle in front of the mirror, just smiling at his reflection. Soon, this entity known as laxmii begins to emerge. Jimmy starts asking his cousin for her makeup, and he even begins draping his aunt's saris. The young boy they knew is rapidly slipping away, replaced by something entirely different.
You know, this drastic change leads to a really pivotal, heartbreaking confrontation. Jimmy's father walks in and catches him wearing lipstick and women's clothing. And when a tearful Jimmy confesses that he wants to become a girl, his father reacts with sheer rage. Completely unable to understand what's happening, the father beats Jimmy and locks him alone inside his room. But here's the thing, this harsh isolation is exactly what the dark spirit needs to take full control.
Locked in his room, terrified, crying. The pacing of the horror really accelerates here. A dark shadow suddenly appears on his bedroom wall. Then, a strange voice begins calling out to him from directly beneath his bed. When Jimmy finally works up the courage to look down, the decaying body of the dead woman from the street crawls out toward him. In a terrifying climax to the night, the spirit breaches his body and completely possesses him. Jimmy faints. The boy he was is officially gone.
The entity is now in complete control, loudly claiming to everyone in the house that her name is Laxmii. The source details some seriously horrific symptoms here. Jimmy experiences extreme, violent mood swings. Like one moment he's screaming and tearing the house apart, and the very next he's cowering in a corner, weeping uncontrollably. But the absolute most terrifying part? Laxmii tells Jimmy's mother that she is being hunted by terrifying demons. We're talking demons with backward feet, blood-stained teeth, and incredibly long nails, all coming to kill her. The urgency for Jimmy's family is escalating by the second as his condition just completely deteriorates.
Uncovering the past, the tragic truth of Joseph. Jimmy's father, desperate for answers and completely ridden with guilt, returns to the neighborhood where they first saw the body to investigate. Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive plot twist it reveals regarding the ghost's identity. The locals tell him that the dead woman on the street wasn't actually a woman at all. It was a boy named Joseph. The source explains that Joseph had changed his name to Laxmii because he was deeply in love with another man and they just wanted to get married. But society wouldn't allow it. The source outlines that Joseph's family viewed his love for another man as an unforgivable sin. To prevent what they perceived as dishonor and village gossip, they brutally murdered Joseph right in front of the entire village. It was a textbook honor killing. So the ghost haunting Jimmy wasn't some evil monster. It was a deeply traumatized victim of extreme prejudice who was just seeking refuge. Realizing his own harsh treatment of Jimmy kind of mirrored the very intolerance that killed Joseph, the father rushes home. And then the climax hits. They hear Jimmy screaming in absolute terror from the demons. The family breaks down the door and they find him completely paralyzed and stiff. They rush him to the hospital just in the nick of time and doctors manage to save his life. Finally, to put the tormented spirit to rest, the family learns Joseph's story, they pray for him, and respectfully bury the stolen bangle at Joseph's grave.
Jimmy recovers, remembering absolutely nothing of the ordeal. Beyond the ghost story, the real-world message.
Let's step back from the fictional horror for just a second. The source material uses this harrowing story to pivot to a very grounded, earnest discussion. So the crucial point is that society punishes people for their choices in love. The creator's core thesis focuses heavily on the discrimination faced by marginalized groups. It highlights that people who are misunderstood often endure terrible treatment from society, simply because their choices don't fit into traditional expected molds.
The source explicitly points out that many LGBTQ+ individuals are targeted, and sometimes even killed, by powerful people in society just for loving who they choose. The message presented in the source is very clear. Everyone has the human right to love, and all choices in love should be respected. It's definitely a stark reminder of the real-world horrors that exist far outside the boundaries of fictional ghost stories.
Sponsor Spotlight. Kashkaro's Diwali promo. Transitioning from the heavy narrative themes, the source text also included a heavily featured promotional segment. Impartially breaking down this tie-in, users were directed to click an orange button granting them access to over 1,500 shopping sites. And this brilliantly illustrates the reward system, allowing any cashback earned to be transferred directly to a bank account or converted into Amazon vouchers. Additionally, the source highlighted a 25 rupee sign-up bonus via their specific description link and a promotional giveaway where over 50 lucky winners could snag extra Amazon vouchers. So we've covered a terrifying haunting, a tragic backstory, the real-world prejudice that inspired it all, and the promotional context of the source. Which brings us to our final thought. When you look at the tragic fate of Joseph in this explainer, it really begs the ultimate question. In these tales of the supernatural, is society the real monster? It's a heavy, provocative thought to leave you with, but an incredibly important one to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you on the next explainer.